Welcome to The Artist Politic. In the season finale, we're at Lighthouse Coffee with Jon Poneman, co-founder of Sub Pop Records. We talk about his role in shaping Seattle's music industry, living with Parkinson's disease, and how music can still change the world. Jon Poneman, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
We really do appreciate you being on the show.
After all these years of watching, you decided to take my opportunity and live it up.
Good. So I'm going to try and get through this interview without uttering the words grunge or curt. But with that said, how does it feel to be the inventor of grunge and the guy that discovered Kurt Cobain?
I built grunge brick by brick.
Yeah.
No, I did sign Kurt Cobain to his first recording contract, but the whole idea of discovery is kind of weird because he was making music for years for his peers and friends and with his peers and, community, and that I happened to discover it the way that I did by way of local producer Jack and Dino.
Mm-hmm.
It was fortuitous, but that was what I basically was intending to do, was to uncover great music in this city and in this region. And I feel like I accomplished what I set out to do, but I don't feel any great responsibility.
Right.
That was all him and the band.
Right. During that time, I think the perception, and maybe this is the reality, but the perception was that there was a lot of anger and angst behind these young bands coming out of Seattle. Was that the case? Were they angry?
I don't think so. I mean, it's hard.
Were they just kids fucking around?
To make sociological evaluations like that.
Yeah.
Because, obviously, if you read and learn about Kurt Cobain's life before he became a star,
mm-hmm.
I've got to believe that there was some anger there.
Yeah.
you know? But I think there was probably some anger there after that happened. But my point is that's an individual observation that I am making about an individual.
Right.
I don't think that, a lot of the people in the bands were involved in the arts. A lot of them were going to the University of Washington, some of whom were pursuing a liberal arts education, others of whom were in business, some were even in medicine. There were a lot of people who were working class, just doing their jobs and, passing time playing music, basically.
Yeah.
There was no real organized rebellion or sense of rebellion. It was, it was party time, basically. It was something that you do to uninhibit yourself.
Yeah. I guess it is easy for us to, especially looking back, to kind of paint it with a wide brush, right?
Yeah.
Because it's this grunge thing that is, well, maybe you helped a little bit package that as a big piece of Seattle culture But
Yeah, I
like
mean,
you're saying, it's individual
exactly.
people.
The
and
thing
bands.
is that, you know, there have been movies, well, a movie in particular, Hype, where you see all of these people say, we didn't know what was going to happen. You know, I mean, that's true to a large degree. But when Bruce and I set off to make a run of Sub Pop, it was our intention to take things as far as they could go.
Yeah.
And that meant, you know, it wasn't how far we could go in fancy business deals and riding in limousines and stuff like
Right.
that. Though I don't delegitimize that as somebody's dream. If that's what somebody is in it for, then that's their business. We were into celebrating the regional sound that we thought was most vital at that time.
Yeah.
And a lot of people agreed with us.
Yeah.
You know, there is a great tradition of rhythm and blues and rock music from this part of the world. And we humbly submitted that this music that we were advocating was part of that longer great tradition.
Yeah. So you were just saying that you and Bruce, you set out to take it as far as you could, as far as it would go.
Yeah.
Are you happy with the result? Do you think it went as far as it could have? Do you think?
Oh yeah. No, I'm very happy with the result. You know, I'm sad that some people were lost along the way.
Sure.
And, you know, I feel like I could have comported myself better in certain situations, but that's what life is about, is learning how to deal, how to live.
What situations are you referring to?
Well, in one particular situation at Sub Pop, Bruce and I had a disagreement. In Sub Pop lore, it's called the coup.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel that I reacted far more emotionally, part of it born of exhaustion and anger, and, you know, not seeing things from a peaceful perspective. You know, and I don't always succeed, but I try to look at things from that perspective because it's more life affirming.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you get caught up in drama.
Yeah. What do you think you were protecting at that time? Maybe you weren't protecting, that's putting words in your mouth.
No, that's. I thought that I was protecting the company.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, Bruce had taken a step back. He was raising a family, and he wanted, you know, we had structured a deal with Warner Music where if we had taken modest steps, we could have built a more natural company. When I got involved, I was involved from the beginning of the full-time label, but when Bruce stepped back and I took charge, my interest was to be competitive with labels much bigger than ours with regard to recording advances. Mm-hmm. We burned through so much money. And the thing is, the irony is that none of the bands who recorded for Sub Pop came to Sub Pop for huge recording advances. They came to Sub Pop for the feeling.
Yeah.
That's something I lost track of. So what I was trying to protect was this thing that became an overthought, overmanaged, and yet simultaneously incredibly chaotic, sprawling mess. When the thing that I should have been trying to protect was the vibe. But, there were enough people who cared for the company, and one of my strengths as a human being is I'd like to think that I learned from my mistakes. And the combination of caring people and my ability to find the core of what was making the situation so toxic and dispensing with it. I think that led us to a redux, a rebirth that took us through years that were without a doubt the most prosperous for the company. The early years have earned the mythology, but the years 2000 through 2008 were golden years for Sub Pop.
Yeah.
With Iron and Wine and Postal Service, the Shins, Fleet Foxes, Band of Horses.
Right. Well, let's see. Let's shift gears. Because we could do a whole show on all that stuff.
Whatever you want to do, man.
Well, let's do the good old lightning round.
Okay.
What's your favorite breakfast cereal?
Life.
Is that a metaphor for something, or is that just a cereal?
No, it's actually, I went back and ate a bowl of it just a few weeks ago, and it was pure sugar. But when I was a youngster, it was pure heaven.
Right.
There's no metaphor or deeper meaning.
Just checking. What's the most embarrassing interaction you've had with a famous person?
Well, the most embarrassing interaction I've had with a famous person was actually caught on film. And at the beginning of, it's actually a David Cross. So Megan and Tony both work at Sub Pop with me, went down to Charleston, South Carolina, and we had, I can't remember if Shut Up You Fucking Baby had come out yet, which was the first David Cross record that we did. But we were, I think it's Let America Laugh. I can't remember what the name of this DVD was. It's a long time ago. But none of us had met him before. Tony had spoken to him on the phone. But basically, he was being followed around with a camera. So he went into the bathroom. And I said, this is my chance. So I went in and I just kind of did a very, incredibly insensitive, kind of like just being a freak. Yeah. And he was sort of like, and it's caught on film, and it actually went on to the...
Is it on the DVD?
Went on the DVD.
Awesome.
And it's there to this day. If you look at, you go to www.subpop.com and look under David Cross and look for the first DVD release. That's what it's on.
Awesome. What's your favorite place to travel?
Poland.
Yeah.
Yes, it's where my family on my wife's side is. It's where my forebears are from. It's not a normal European country that gets cited as being a favorite place to go. Mm-hmm. It's not France or Italy, but it's culturally an incredibly overlooked and resonant place. Beautiful. I got a lot of friends there after all these years.
Yeah.
A lot of people leave home to go try new things, and I like that too, but that's kind of like leaving home to go home. But I'm a fan of home, so that's why I've lived in the same city for 40 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of home, what Seattle driving maneuver gives you road rage?
Well, having lived here for 40 years, it's still, I think I'm going to become more sentimental about this as the years go by, but the slow driver who invents the rules as they go along. They're kind of puttering along and then, oh, look, and there's a line of traffic. Come on.
Isn't that amazing how Seattle is, growing up and changing, but that's still a constant?
Yeah.
What band on the roster makes you feel the oldest?
Mudhoney. Because I'm still older than them.
That's awesome. What would you have done with your life if Sub Pop hadn't worked out?
Probably would have puttered around and gone back to school, and have taken forever to get a diploma.
Yeah. What do you think you would have studied?
I'm interested to this day in languages, though I'm not very good at it. Political science, philosophy, stuff where I basically wouldn't help me whatsoever to get a job.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess the short answer to your original question is I'd probably be a fry cook.
That was a great lightning round. You scored very well.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Take the victory lap. So it sounds like you still have that kind of that same music community ideal, in that you'd rather work with a band or an artist that is ready to have just an honest partnership, and maybe you'd rather work with an artist like that that's less successful than work with somebody that's not down for the whole community package.
Well, I don't think it's an either or proposition. I have an interest in Seattle's relationship with its city, our city, Seattle. Sub Pop's relationship with Seattle. I'm interested in new technology, of course, and I guess this brings us into an inevitable political realm, which is, rampant consumerism. It, drives our economy, but I think in Seattle in particular, we are seeing the ultimate glorification of, deification, one would say, of the ultimate consumer machine. And it's swallowed this city, and everything from our politics to our values to our sense of community, to our faith, everything is being touched by this. And there are people in the world who face so much greater calamity than we can even imagine, who are doing a better job at devising systems, or at least trying for them, that are more equitable. And it's hard to go too far down this road, because as a product of a baby boomer upbringing, I know that I don't possess a purity that people would quickly seize upon to, say they quickly see the hypocrisy. When I say I believe in egalitarianism, and yet I'm a record label boss with the, I'd like to think that my company is, that we're fair and generous and community-minded, but it's such a distortion where we're at as a society right now. If you're playing the game at all, I think you're in some manner or the other corrupt.
Do you think you and Sub Pop are playing the game a little bit? Just by existing?
I need to be careful. When I say corrupt, I'm not talking about being a dishonest business person.
Sure.
I think we are scrupulous. I think we are very tidy and mindful of the quality of business that we do. But, look around you. Look at this city that you've lived here for.
I moved here in 1997.
Yeah, from Eastern Washington.
That's right.
So you've had, for your entire life, you've had an awareness of Seattle.
Yes, my family came over here all the time. My dad's an artist, and he used to do the Fremont craft fair in the summers. And so I remember Fremont, back in the 80s when it was, funky Fremont. I was a little kid, but so I have a reference for
Seattle. There's a history of exploitation. I mean, if you look into any civilization, there's exploitation, struggle, and suffering in all of them. But I think we have an unusual confluence of all of the above. But it's all, at this point, being displaced by our rosy economy, who's only favoring the wealthiest, while so many of us go without health care and education and the basic necessities to live like a human being.
Right.
So I think a lot about that in the context of what what we as a record label represent. Because it may be my own baby boomer perspective and a bit of lingering naivete, but the music that I grew up with was a companion to revolutionary thought and action. You can look at that revolutionary thought and action and go, there was so much jostling with windmills, but it felt somehow more real to me. And maybe it's a value thing. And maybe it's because my life and values were shaped so much by actions that took place in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. You know, where there was a lot of pain and suffering and angst. But there was also this flowering counterculture.
Yeah.
You know, and it exists now. It's just different.
Yeah.
And,
how do you think it's different?
You know, Ronald Reagan, the idea that this man could become president was a colossal outrage. And when you compare that to what we're living through now, and it's not just the presidency.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, I mean, you wonder what comes next. You know, if you look at history, these things seem to wax and wane, or they're put more succinctly. The monster comes and then retreats and then comes again even stronger. You know, I imagine what happens when a smart Donald Trump becomes president. You know, and then I think about, well, we've got to stop that. But the only way that you stop that is, that I know of, is either through calamity or a change in consciousness. And we have the machinery to orchestrate a change in consciousness. It's just that the way it's being orchestrated heretofore is, you know, sabotage and the defilement of all the things that I hold dear as a child of the 60s. The peaceful, cooperative, egalitarian ideals, you know. And I guess I just want to find it at this phase in my life how I can make a difference.
Yeah. How do you think you can contribute to that change of consciousness?
Through music.
Yeah.
You know, I still think that Sub Pop is a vehicle for artists who can change people's lives. They don't need to be towing a party line, you know, but they have the quality. It's, you know, it's, I was trying to articulate by saying, you know, on one hand, it's so tangible, and yet it's also so ephemeral. You know, you know it when you hear it. You can live with, I mean, you're a musician, Charlie. It's just when you, be it your own creation or something that stirs that thing in your soul, there is nothing else like it. And, you know, I don't need to go around and sign a bunch of bands to hear that music. That music is everywhere. But what I would like to do is, in my own way, champion it without it being reduced in every instance to a commercial transaction.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of hard to do when you're a record label guy.
Sure, you gotta keep the lights on. But, you know, I've been a musician my whole life, and I'm here mostly to sit and learn from you, but I have a hard time believing what you're saying in that this beautiful music can change the world that we're living in now. That's my pessimism coming out, maybe just this moment, but do you really believe that? Do you think that artists now need to be more overtly political?
No.
No?
It's a difficult question. It's a good question. I think yes and no. I think we all have a responsibility to be activists in seeking out the world that we want to live in. You know, I don't think that a single song will miraculously make everything go away.
Right.
But it's an incredibly easy contribution to changing people's consciousness. You know, it's not, even if it's for, 2 minutes of the day that you listen to this song and you go someplace else, that is a change in consciousness. It's not as strong, nor is it as permanent as one needs, or is universal, as one needs to change the world in a grand sense. But, I think I spend a lot of time thinking about the staying power and the transcendental, transformative qualities of music. I just, it never ceases to amaze me. If you're listening to white voices, folk music from the Ukraine, or you're listening to Delta blues, it's the cry of humanity. And there's something it can be unsettling, but it can also be incredibly uplifting. Does that make any sense?
Absolutely.
Good.
Yeah. Through Sub Pop and through your position of privilege, you have this platform. You have a large platform at your fingertips that you're using for the music industry, but you have the ear of millions of people that pay attention. Are you ever tempted to use that for overtly political or even spiritual leverage on the world?
No. and the reason is that it's a little bit more complicated than that. This is another way of approaching the question that you had asked is, the quandary for me, the paradox is that, there is the privilege that you cite, there is the industry that I work in, and then there is the corrupt world that I've made note of. It seems to me that it is tantamount to fighting fire with fire to use this platform to do the things that you cite. I think it's an exodus of the soul, first and foremost, and I think the thing that in my experience, the moments of liberation are things that take me away from all of that. And another voice with a set of principles and an ideological handbook. No matter what one person or a number of people may think, I don't feel confident in my ability to do what needs to be done for the masses. I think it's something that is, I believe in that hyper-individualism is corrosive on our society, but when you're talking about what is really a global spiritual quest, on some level you have to do it within yourself. And
now
when I phrase things like global spiritual quest, it makes it sound messianic, and I actually feel like it's the opposite in many ways. Therein lies the paradox.
At this point now, I've sat with lots of different artists in this forum and had, some similar conversations. And a recurring theme is variations on what you just said, which is, I'm not the guy.
Yeah.
I'm not the guy for this. But if I keep hearing that, and I keep asking people, who is the guy? Who is the person? Who is the entity that is going to guide us?
I would say it a little bit differently. I am the guy. But I think that we're all the guy.
Yeah.
And the hope is with, the freedom of thought. There's a lot of challenges to, very obvious, Orwellian prophecies coming true right before our eyes.
Yeah.
But there's also an incredibly potent and liberating source of ideas, thoughts, traditions. The hope is that, it may take a messianic figure to point the way, but that's always ended up being a nightmare, all through history. I've got to believe that if we're ever going to change, we need to learn how to do it from within ourselves. How that happens, I don't know. In that way, I'm not the guy. But when I was talking about, maybe everybody should listen to Tommy James and the Shondells. My point in talking about that song is that I recognize inside me, it's like when I first heard that song after not having heard it for 40 years, I wept. It's a dumb little pop song, but dumb little pop songs do that to me.
Yeah.
And, we all have that thing that turns us into mush. And instead of being afraid of that thing, we got to run towards it and embrace it and nurture it. Because I think that quality is the thing I associate it at least with the cultivation of compassion, devotion, surrender. When I say surrender, I mean putting it's like a ability to put your own stuff, lay it down and be Christian, as it were. Put other people's needs ahead of your own.
Now therein lies the rub. So you're talking about Christian ethics and lessons and morality.
One version.
But boy, people read that book differently, don't they? And interpret it differently. Do. And so how do we get around that problem? Because you're talking about go towards the thing that turns you to mush. Yeah. And that's a beautiful thing to say. Yeah. But what if the thing that turns you to mush is that mega church that is helping you be more judgmental and all of the list of nasty things that can bring?
Well, inevitably that's going to happen. And I don't think that you can be okay with it, but I don't think that you fight it back by being the liberal version of that.
Right.
I really think that, it's going to be an exodus one way or the other. From where we are now, hopefully to the promised land, wherever, and I think that that's something, I will leave the analogy there. I don't think, I don't think that a Moses or a burning bush or any number of biblical contrivances is the point. I think the point is that it's a journey that we're all taking. And, I guess if you're going to employ a tidy cliche, it's basically finding your bliss, as it were. And I guess, I feel like I am not, as it pertains to Sub Pop, the thing about that I will say in favor of entrepreneurial capitalism in the early 21st century is if you do it right, what I see as right, you can create a pocket, your own little colony of decency. I would love to believe that Sub Pop is that. If it's not, I'm going to keep trying to make it more that way in the best way I know how.
Yeah. Do you think that we're at a point now in human history where we just need to be done with capitalism? Is that still a valid way to run the world?
I am no great believer in capitalism. I mean, I think that, you know, as far as systems go in modern society, the thing is that anarchy and socialism have never been given a fair shake. You know, for that matter, capitalism hasn't really either. You know, you have human beings, the essence of, we're rough, corrupt, brutal, selfish, emotional creatures. And we're smart enough to conjure these notions, these fragments of what perfection looks like. But I don't know whether we are physiologically capable of reaching it. And it may be our greatest curse that we can realize in our dreams and our ideals what that world would look like, but because we are who we are, we may never reach it.
So you were diagnosed with Parkinson's disease in 2010, is that right?
I think that's right.
Yeah.
I had it before then, but that's when I think it was diagnosed.
That's when it was official. Yeah. It's a simple question, but other than, you know, needlessly throwing your phone across the room, how has this affected your life?
It's a big pain in the ass. It really is. But, you know, I love my Parkinson's disease.
You love it?
I really do. You know, it is such a pain in the ass. I mean, I've sat through this talk, you know, now my medicine's finally kicked in and my hand has stopped tremoring. You know, everything from driving to sleeping, it touches every aspect of my life. Having said that, I have a good life. I have a lot of humor. I got a lot of joy. And the Parkinson's, in an odd way, is part of it. You know, and it's kind of like the life companion that I never asked for. And, you know, it causes me untold hours of frustration and frustration and I'm trying to think of what the right word would be. Is because I'm like going out of my way to emphasize the bad stuff because I kind of feel like it's my duty to. Because I sound like such a freak when I say that I love my Parkinson's. But it's taught me so many lessons. You know, going back to what I'm talking about, you know, surrendering and compassion. You know, nothing teaches you how to be compassionate than getting debilitated somehow. You know, you're walking a mile and, you know, or however many miles. I was thinking of the Joe South song. You know, but walking in another person's shoes, you know, and I'm really grateful to it for that.
Yeah.
And I mean, I use it for getting on airplanes early, for getting treated. You know, it's like some people are indignant and prideful, like, don't help me. I'm like, bring it on. You know, and it's fun. You know, I mean, as I said, it's a pain. It's a nuisance. I wish I didn't have it, you know, but I don't wish it that hard. There's other things that I would get rid of in my life way before that.
Yeah. If you had to leave the people with one thought or one lesson, what would you say?
Live your life.
That simple?
I strive for simplicity. I don't always succeed. But what I mean by that is, it's a trick to listen and be alive and aware in this world and not get consumed by all the messaging.
Mm.
And that's what I mean by live your life.
Yeah.
Live your life.
Yeah. Well, JP, thanks for coming through and talking with us.
Thank you.
We really appreciate it.
It was great.